Hello everyone and welcome to a very special episode of the Card Combo Show, episode 32, I'm going to be reviewing the cards, or the unique cards, from the new Shadowbringers dual deck set. There's quite a few cards, so I'm not going to be going as deep into some of the cards, and one of them I can barely go deep in at all. But yeah, I'm just going to be going over the cards, some of the cards that they combo well with, and the sort of decks I think they'll fit into. Alright, let's jump straight in. So these are the 10 unique cards from the set. So you've got PHILIA, Ranger, Innocence, EMET-SELCH, TITANIA, URIANGER, THANCRED, Oracle Light, Y'shtola, and Crystal EXARCH. The bottom ones were in the Scions deck, top ones in the Lightbringers, or Light Wardens deck. So, you know, the protagonist, antagonist. I think the antagonistic cards are far more variable and a lot more versatile in the decks they can go in, and arguably better, but you know, that's up to your opinion. But the not the URIANGER deck, the Scions are super strong for a Scion deck and will only make a Scion deck stronger. So let's get straight to it. First off, PHILIA, an 8 CP 10,000 power forward. If PHILIA is dealt damage by an ability, the damage becomes 0 instead, so that's really good as well. And then when PHILIA enters the field, deal 10,000 damage to all the forwards. PHILIA deals you 1 point of damage. Wow. So it's basically Fire's Shantoto, really. And it's got a nice little protection ability on it to boot. So Une, yeah, just be able to flicker this card when you need to, because why wouldn't you just remove everything? You could just cast a summon every turn. Just have like 3 fillers as your only forward, and then just keep casting summons Une. It's like, no, I don't care about your forwards, they're going away. So things like Archer and Carbuncle to get rid of or stop cards like Kuchaspel, mainly due to the fact that you want them to stop damage from being reduced so they can kill PHILIA, and obviously one of the PHILIA's main points is that it when it takes damage from an ability, it becomes 0 instead. So that's a huge sticking point for PHILIA. So, Zidane and Kane. Now, these cards are fantastic because they take no damage unless it's or damage is reduced unless it's in certain circumstances. And that will mean that you can play PHILIA with these two on the field and they'll stick around. So you could just have those two there, your opponent could have a couple of forwards waiting to block those guys, you play PHILIA, all their forwards are gone and you keep yours. Kuchaspel. So obviously you want Kuchaspel on your side as well, so that damage cannot be reduced, because you know there's a lot of cards that can reduce damage now, and it could be a case of that they just have stuff like Y'shtola. They could have these forwards. You could be coming up against these forwards, at which point you want to use something like Kuchaspel so that the damage cannot be reduced to 0. Okay, Ranjit. Another 8 CP forward, but it's only 8k this time. The cost required for Ranjit is reduced by 1 for each backup you control. When Ranjit enters the field, choose one forward opponent controls to deal 8,000 damage. Now, I'm not huge on this card because you have to be on 5 backups for it to become a 3 CP forward. Even though it's dealing 8k onto the field and it is an 8k forward, I just don't... It's too slow for me, especially in Fire. But there are some ways to kind of hedge your bets and make it get a bit better as well. One of the good things about this card, I feel, though, is that it deals 8,000 damage, and something that Fire seems to struggle a lot with is dealing 8,000 damage. You get so many cards that deal 7,000, and a fair few that deal 9, but I think it deals 8, so this is nice for that at least. So Gaius, obviously when a 14 forward enters the field, choose a forward, deal it 3,000 damage, so you can play Ranger, and with Ranger and Gaius, that means you'll be dealing 11k to something. Kuchaspel again, obviously 8k can be smalled by... Smalled? Where am I pulling these words from? Reduced by things like... I'm having a fart in my brain. Cecil. Let's go with Cecil. Either backup or forward. Wow, Jesus. I think I've got early onset dementia. So, yeah, obviously the damage can be reduced having something like Kuchaspel, especially if you're paying a lot for Ranjit as well. Like, something with PHILIA. PHILIA, it's a board wipe, so yeah, it's a bit more worth the value, and obviously its cost can't be reduced. But Ranjit, if you're paying like 5 CP for this, and then its damage gets reduced and ends up not hitting anyway, you want to make sure you've got a Kuchaspel there. Now, obviously, that is kind of semi-increasing Ranjit's cost, because the fact that you are having to use a CP basically to stop the damage from being reduced, but it's probably worth it. Okay, Mutsuki. So this is a nice way to be able to kind of recur some more cost on Ranjit as well. So let's say you are only paying 3 for Ranjit and you've got 5 backups. With Mutsuki down and Ranjit does kill something, Mutsuki will then reactivate, which means that effectively Ranjit's only cost you 2, which is pretty good. Manasvin Warmech, yeah, just paying an additional CP, and again, this is more paying another additional CP to increase Ranjit's effect. Ranjit already costs a lot, and his reduction is not fantastic in my opinion, but still paying that 1 additional CP just to make it so he deals a 10k, it makes him a bit more worth it. Tilika. Everyone hates this card. I love it personally. I understand why they hate it though. But again, yeah, being able to reduce Ranjit's cost further, it's just worth it in my opinion. EMET-SELCH, a 3 CP 7k forward. When EMET-SELCH enters the field, you may pay 4 for colorless. If you do so, search for 1 ice backup, cost 4 or less, and play it onto the field. Now, I think this is maybe one of the best, or probably the best card, if not one of the best cards in the dual deck. Simply for the fact that any card that is that good with both consistency but also just searching play onto the field, I think it's so powerful. And he's on curve, you know, he could have not been on curve and still been pretty decent, just, you know, a 6k forward instead. But anyway, Eduardo. So let's say you've got a few forwards that want to attack and your opponent's just there blocking. You play EMET-SELCH to search yourself the Eduardo. Eduardo enters the field, dull all the characters your opponent controls. Their monsters, their forwards, their backups, all now dulled. And that will also force your opponent's hand, because if they needed that CP for either abilities or to cast summons, they're going to have to use it then and there, which kind of puts the ball in your park a bit more because you can react to their reaction. You can anticipate it. And it's, you know, if they don't react to that and they still want to cast the thing from hand, they're going to have to pay completely out of hand, which is also good. Terra. So Terra's just a fantastic card anyway because she's in the EX burst, but the fact that Terra enters the field, you can search yourself an ice summon. So EMET-SELCH comes in, Terra comes in, gets you another card. So again, more consistency with this. EMET-SELCH can search so many consistent cards. She can get you the summon that you need, and you know, as long as there's an ice summon, and there's a lot of good ice summons, she can get you whatever you need. It could be Shiva to dull and 3 forward your opponent controls, or it could be just a little Mind Flayer. There's just so many good cards it can work well with. Now, Isael and Iodalus, more of the consistency. He can search you something, or Iodalus can just get you something up the break zone. It's such a good consistency engine. Casitas. When Casitas enters the field, choose up to 2 forwards. If you control 4 more ice characters, freeze them, and when Casitas enters the field, choose 1 forward, dull it. So, the fact you're playing EMET-SELCH into Casitas, you are massively overpaying for Casitas, but you have 2 of the ice characters already there to be able to fulfill Casitas' ability, and the chances are, if you're playing EMET-SELCH, you're going to have a few backups down. You only need 2 backups, at which point you will then finish the turn with 3 backups, EMET-SELCH, and hopefully you will have dull and frozen a couple of your opponent's forwards. Devout. Now, obviously, EMET-SELCH can play Devout onto the field, but this is more about using Devout as a combat trick. So you could be attacking with something and your opponent's blocking, or they're about to cast something, summon something like that. You can respond with breaking Devout to bring an EMET-SELCH. EMET-SELCH's ability will trigger, and then obviously the Devout isn't there anymore because it has resolved. And you can then, even if you've got 5 backups and Devout was the 5th, you break it, you can then use EMET-SELCH to search yourself the 5th backup again. Now, pretty much any of the backups I've mentioned previously would work with this, so, you know, Eduardo or Iodalus, but there's a few others. So something like Summoner. So you've attacked with something, or your opponent is casting a summon, you can use Devout to bring in EMET-SELCH, who can then search you the Summoner. Now, you will have to break the Summoner to be able to use its ability to cancel the summon's effect, but, you know, sometimes needs must, and ultimately that's a play that your opponent probably won't see coming. Renoa, again, I could have used Azael, but I'm just kind of focusing on the fact that it's a summon, and say you're attacking with a forward that's got an S ability, you can devout to bring in EMET-SELCH, to bring in Renoa or Azael or whatever, to find you that S fodder to be able to use an S ability. And Chemist, you're attacking with a forward, it's of equal power to your opponent's blocker. Devout, EMET-SELCH, Chemist. When Chemist enters the field, choose one forward, it cannot be broken this turn. And that could be quite funny alongside the likes of maybe, I don't know, Chilinka. So you've got a forward that's attacking twice, but, you know, it can't actually push through. Now it can't be broken either. Titania. Again, another really strong card in my opinion. 2 CP, 8k. With a really weird drawback. You can only cast Titania if you have a forward, backup, monster, and summon in your break zone before paying the cost for Titania. So it means that obviously if you've got no monsters there but you've got a monster in hand, you cannot discard that monster to pay for Titania. They all have to be there before you even go to pay her cost. And when Titania enters the field, choose up to 2 characters opponent controls, dull them and freeze them. That's pretty good, especially the fact that she's so far over curve with her power. She also gets to dull and freeze 2 characters? Wow. So, Lock. Whenever Lock gets played, it basically means that your opponent has one monster in their deck, or, you know, they've got more than one monster in their deck, but it's, you know, one particular type of monster. You play a Lock to search that monster, to then put the monster into the break zone, and now Titania can be fulfilled. Lock obviously can search other things as well, but the chances are, if you're playing, like, just a reasonably standard deck, you're going to have monsters, you're going to have forwards, backups, and summons in your break zone anyway, but Lock searches that monster for you, even if you only have one in the deck, to then put it into the break zone. Phoenix. Yeah, just cheat Titania in. It's incredibly good. Your opponent could be attacking, you cast Phoenix, you bring in Titania, you can now dull and freeze 2 of your opponent's backups, 2 of their forwards, whatever, but also Titania can now block for what is effectively 10k. That's insanely good. A blocker for 10k and dulling and freezing 2 things for paying 4 CP on your opponent's turn. Wow. Gilgamesh. Here's a janky little play for you. You play Titania. Now, obviously, you have to have the monsters or whatever in the break zone, but, you know, if you're in Water Ice, it's not unlikely. You play Titania onto the field. You cast a Famfrit. You put Titania and a forward your opponent controls into the break zone. You attack with Gilgamesh, and also Titania's entry effect, sorry, so she gets to dull and freeze, say, 2 of your opponent's backup. You attack with Gilgamesh, you get to bring Titania back in, and dull and freeze 2 more characters. And they've got an attack to deal with, you've broken one of their forwards, and you've frozen 4 things. Une. Of course, you just want to keep on flickering her because it's ice, that's what ice does. And Titania, yeah, dulling and freezing 2 characters is super strong, but the fact that you can cast such cheap summons to keep on flickering Titania as well. So, you know, it could just be like a carbuncle, so choose just 1 forward, dull it, so, you know, play Titania into the field, cast carbuncle, Titania comes in again, you've dull and frozen 4 characters and dulled 1 forward, or you could just buff your own forward, or you could just choose 2 characters your opponent controls, freeze them. So you could Titania, dull and freeze a forward and dull and freeze a backup. You could use Carbuncle to then freeze 2 more backups, and then Titania could come in again and freeze another 2 backups, or just more forwards or monsters or whatever. You know, this combination is just so powerful. Mind Flayer, again, just dull something out of the way and draw yourself a card. So you're getting to dull and freeze 4 things if you play Titania this turn, and you get a card hand, and you get to dull something. You see where I'm going with this? And then the complete opposite end of the scale, Hades. You play Titania onto the field, you dull and freeze something. You then cast Hades. Titania is going to flicker, but also Hades can now break one of the forwards that your opponent got dulled from Titania, and they're going to have to discard, and then Titania's going to come in and dull and freeze things again. Innocence. Right. This is what I class as a degenerate card, because I think just giving a card the parentheses of, if you have a card named Innocence in the break zone, Innocence gains, and then pay an ice and dull. Your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. You can only use this ability during your turn and only once per turn. That's just gross. It basically, like, the thing is that Innocence can just do this alongside attacking, and if you can reactivate it using its fire ability as well to deal 10k to something. I mean, I don't like discard as much as the next person, but I just feel this leans in so hard to turbo discard. But not only that, it works so well in a multicolored deck, or just mono fire if you've got the ice generating Moogle. Just, oh, I don't like this card. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love this card, but I hate this card. So, yeah. Oh, you've got to get Innocence into the break zone. I'm sure that'll be hard. Magic Pot plays Innocence onto the field and puts one into the break zone. Mega Sisters just puts it into the break zone. Rosa, you can discard a Innocence from hand if it's already on the field. Zack, you can discard a card and deal 5k to something, and then you can, obviously, in the next turn, or no, in your opponent's turn, then use Innocence's abilities. And this is completely negating the fact that you can just discard from your hand if you're over card count. If you have 6 cards in hand and one of those cards is Innocence, just put it into the break zone. Because you go to end your turn, you're over card limit. Oh, I have to discard. I guess I'll discard this Innocence. Oh look, Innocence is now turned on. Turned on. Ugh. You know what I mean though. But yeah, I don't feel that, like, you have the argument that Innocence, or there's so many cards now that can also remove cards from the break zone, and it will very much be a lightning rod for that. But still, like, if your opponent doesn't have that, answer in hand or on the field, then they're going to struggle a little bit, because this is going to be horrible to deal with. Class 2nd Moogle. As I said earlier before, if you've got Class 2nd Moogle, you can use both of Innocence abilities. It's as simple as that. Tyro, again, multicolor. It's just you can be Mono Earth with Innocence and make your opponent discard 2 cards or deal 10k to something. Cool. Let's get away from Innocence, shall we? We'll move on to the Scions. So the Crystal Exarch. At the beginning of each of the attack... Oh, sorry, I'll start again. At the beginning of the attack phase during each player's turn, choose one forward. It gains plus 2000 power until the end of the turn. Damage 5 the Crystal Exarch gains when the Crystal Exarch attacks. Choose one forward. If its power is less than the Crystal Exarch's power, break it, and it's on curve at 3 CP and 7k. So a really interesting card because its 2k power buff is on both players' turns. So Sabin, at damage 5, when Sabin attacks, choose one forward opponent controls, deal it damage equal to Sabin's power. Now, this might seem like a bit of a strange ability given the fact that at damage 5 Crystal Exarch can effectively do the same thing, but the difference here is that there are lots of forwards in the game which, they don't receive damage from abilities, at which point you'd want to use something like Crystal Exarch. But then there are lots of forwards also that can only be broken by abilities or summons that deal damage, so then you'd use Sabin. So that using these two together basically covers all bases. Ramza. So let's say you've got Lulu on your backup lineup, and you've already got Crystal Exarch on the field. You pay Ramza. Now you're gonna have to pay 5, yeah I know it sucks, but you go to attack phase. Ramza is now a 10k, and similar to Crystal Exarch, they can attack and break something, but Ramza, it's just a set cost. If it's below this, then it's gonna break it. And there are forwards out there that you can pump up their power to be more than Crystal Exarch, even though they are, 3 CP, 2 CP, whatever. So, it may be a case that you want Ramza to attack instead of Crystal Exarch, so you can just break the forward because of its cost, not because of its power. Gilgamesh. So, for each card named Gilgamesh in your break zone, Gilgamesh gains plus 1000 power. If Gilgamesh has 10,000 power or more, Gilgamesh gains Brave and can attack twice in the same turn. So, you don't need as many Gilgamesh in the break zone to be able to activate his ability. And also, it just means that he'll be a decent blocker on your opponent's turn as well. Galoof. So, Galoof's one of those good but bad cards. So, during each attack phase, Galoof cannot be broken. Now, he's good because of the fact he's just like Crystal Exarch, both attack phases on both yours and your opponent's turn. But, you block with Galoof, you block, say, a 10k forward, you move out of attack phase, Galoof breaks anyway. So, it just means that your opponent can't get past Galoof for the entirety of that attack phase, but making it so that Crystal Exarch can buff Galoof, so he then becomes a bit more formidable. He can break things as well, not just block them. But it also means that he probably or hopefully won't die as easily in your opponent's attack phase as well. Ishtola. She's already a 9k with a Minwu effect on her. What more do I need to say? Whoa! So choose one forward, it gains plus 2000 power until the end of the turn. So obviously having each attack phase, you've got all these things start triggering like Crystal Exarch and Wall. The Wall obviously is only your attack phase, but you can make one forward gain plus 4000 power. That's nuts. If you do that on Crystal Exarch, that's now an 11k forward. There aren't many forwards out there that will get that high or can even be pushed that high without casting a lot of things. So Crystal Exarch will then hopefully be able to break something. Obviously you can use this alongside the likes of Ramza as well, or Sabin. but it's just another funny little combo. Kadaj, at the end of your opponent's turn, you bring Kadaj back onto the field. You can then choose Crystal Exarch to gain plus 2,000 power and Brave. And so then you go to your attack phase, and then Crystal Exarch can gain plus 2,000 power again. It's now, again, 11k power and Brave this time. You can even use this alongside Wall, so then it becomes a 13,000 power forward. Obviously, that's going a bit over the top, because you probably want to have more than just one forward in your field when you're doing this sort of stuff. But, you know, Crystal Exarch could also return the favor onto Kadaj and make that an 11k as well. Chelinka. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to say it really, just adding Brave and can attack twice. You know, Crystal Exarch, you can break something, attack again, break something else, and there's 2 points of damage. Chelinka can also be working alongside, I don't know, Ramza, because you're going to be an Earth, Wind, Lightning. That'd be weird, but still, the point still stands. Ishtola. 6 CP, 8k. Ishtola cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons, so that's pretty decent. When Ishtola enters the field, choose 1 forward in your break zone. If its cost is equal to or less than the number of Job Scion of the 7th Dawn you control, play it onto the field. So she can play any forwards from the break zone, it doesn't matter what they are. The only time she counts Job Scions is when she enters the field and counts the amount on the field, and obviously she counts herself as well, so that's decent. Forza. Yeah, Forza's above curve on power, deals damage when he enters, so it's just a nice little combo, and there are some decent Scions in fire now. You see what I mean? Now this is funny because Alisei and Alphinaud can also be played to then count towards Ishtola's count, but then you can play Ishtola you can play Alisei into Alphinaud to find yourself the Ishtola to then play Ishtola. You could also play Ishtola to play Alisei from the break zone to then play Alphinaud out of hand. You could then also just play Ishtola to just get Alphinaud out of the break zone to then set yourself something. So, you know, these 3 combo really well together. But then there's also Alisei as well. Now, obviously, Ishtola cannot play Alisei, but Alisei will count towards Ishtola's but Ishtola will then also gain haste, and if Ishtola does bring another Scion, which is chances she will, that forward will also gain haste as well. Now you could even play Ishtola to go back, play Ishtola to play Alphinaud to search yourself a card with Alisei on the field, at which point you've just gained 2 forwards of reasonable power with haste, and you've searched a card to hand. That's pretty good. Right, URIANGER. He is a 2 CP 5k EX burst. When URIANGER enters the field, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 category 14 character among them to your hand, and return the other cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. It is very easy, as the dual decks show you, to build a deck comprising only of 14 cards. There aren't any summons at the moment from 14, so that's the one downside to it. So if you do hit 2 summons, then you're like, yeah, well. But chances are, 9 times out of 10, URIANGER will be hitting a 14 card. Now, I don't have any cards to combo with this, because any card that really combos with this dude combos with every other card in this video, because it's he's category 14 or a Scion. I'm not going to talk about comboing these cards with the cards in the deck, like comboing with each other, because that should be fairly obvious. But the artwork on this card is really cool. Okay, THANCRED. When a job Scion of the 7th Dawn other than THANCRED enters your field, until the end of the turn, THANCRED gains plus 2,000 power, haste, and brave. He has an S blasting zone, which he stole from school. S and Dull. Choose 1 forward, deal it damage equal to THANCRED's power, and he's on curve at 4 CP 8k. Now, when I talked about this card with Team Calamity on their podcast, the point was brought up that he is very much just on curve when you play him, which means that really he isn't that powerful. You have to always play things onto the field to make the most of it, which I can see and I agree with, but I think, you know, there's some decent combos regardless. So, Alisei into Alphinaud, you could have THANCRED on the field, you play these 2, they will buff THANCRED by 4k, and he will have gained haste and brave. You can then attack with him, and because you played Alphinaud, it means that you'll be able to search yourself a THANCRED card to use for his S ability. And he will be a 12k forward that's just attacking, and he's got haste and he's got brave, so, you know, there's lots of good things there. Ishtola. So it's when a job Scion of the 7th Dawn enters the field. So it doesn't matter that it's a backup, you can play something like Y'shtola, he becomes a 10k, and then he can attack or, do whatever. Lice. Obviously Lice would enter the field, she would buff Thancred, but also Lice has the buff ability herself as well, and if you are on 5 points of damage, Thancred would actually become a 12k just from playing Lice as well, and Lice gets her own buff. Oracle of Light, the final card. The job sign of the 7th Dawn forwards you control gain plus 2000 power. When the Oracle of Light is put from the field into the break zone, you may remove the Oracle Light from the game. When you do so, choose one job sign of the 7th Dawn in your break zone, play it onto the field, dull. Now a little bit under curve at 3 CP 5k, but that doesn't matter because it's got a phenomenal ability and buffs other sign of the 7th Dawn. So, Alphino. Obviously you can, when Oracle Light dies, just put in the break zone, bring an Alphino, that'll search you a card. That's decent enough, to be honest. Obviously you can use that with Alice as well, so you could, just like what I said with Y'shtola before, you can do the same sort of combo really. It just means that Oracle Light will be put into the break zone. PHILIA, she is a sign of the 7th Dawn, and there is no cost stipulation on the Oracle of Light. So you could, let's say hypothetically, have a PHILIA on the field already, pay to earth, one colourless and dull, put PHILIA into the break zone, choose Oracle of Light, break it. Oracle of Light gets put into the break zone, you move from the game, you bring in PHILIA to search yourself to, or not sorry, recur yourself 2 characters back to your hand. So, yeah, it's a funny little combo. I wouldn't really recommend doing it that way, but you could, if without PHILIA on the field, cast something like THANCRED to put Oracle Light into the break zone, you break one of your opponent's forwards to get PHILIA to then get 2 characters from your break zone to hand. THANCRED. Again, no cost stipulation. So when he enters the field, choose one forward in your break zone. If its cost equal to or less than the number of water forwards and or water backups you control, play it onto the field. So, you could have Oracle of Light there just simply to get back the THANCRED. And as I said earlier, you can combo this with THANCRED. So it could just be a Water Lightning Scions deck with not many Scions, because there's only like 2? I think there's this and URIANGER. Obviously there's some other lightning scions as well, but there aren't a huge amount. But it still works really well, and when Thancred attacks as well, he's got a nice ability, but you want it more for the entry ability. Y'shtola. So obviously Y'shtola's there mostly as a, no, I'm going to cancel that card. So being able to bring her back with a sacrifice of the Oracle Lights is pretty decent. Alright, there we go folks. What did you guys think of the Shadowbringers dual decks and dual deck cards? The decks themselves were utter trash, but the cards are really, really good. And I think it will be fun trying to fit them into wonky decks regardless. As I said, the antagonistic deck is a bit more versatile, but I think overall all the cards have a really good place, and you can fit some of the Scion cards even in a non-Scion deck. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video.